Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Expats in Ukraine with your host, me, Corey. Today my guest is Benya Stewart. He's American, he's a musician, he's also a teacher and a volunteer. What's up, Benya?
Hi, Corey. How are you?
I'm doing well. Is Benya your actual name or is this like the Ukrainian?
It's a Ukrainian version.
Ukrainian
Actually,
version, I thought so, okay.
Yeah, it's actually kind of an Odessa version. But, you know, Benjamin in the U.S., super common name.
Mm-hmm.
Never strongly identified with that name. When I first started coming to Ukraine, I think as a joke, some people call me Benya. It's like cute. Ukrainians love to make like the
Benchik.
smaller, cute versions of names. So I just sort of started introducing myself that way. It honestly helps a lot with social media because it's way more findable.
Yeah. Benya Stewart?
Yeah,
Benya
it's like
Stewart?
there's only
Is
one.
that you?
So, yeah, but I go by any version of Benjamin, Benya. It's all good.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
So I'll call you Benya because I think that's how I was introduced to you.
Sounds good.
We met at, what was that? Was that bar? Like that there was like the folk nights. That was the first time I met you. I was with Dennis.
Yes, so that was the bi-weekly dance parties.
Yeah.
There's a group of people that refer to themselves as the Tusovka in Kyiv.
Sovka, to say, party.
Yes, this is like having a party, having a get together.
Mm-hmm.
And so this crew puts on these folk dances where there's people playing, violin, playing drum. They're playing these traditional Ukrainian dance songs.
Mm.
And then they're also teaching these traditional dances. And it's become pretty popular. They do it all year round. In the winter, we go to Spaska 13.
Yeah.
That's where we met. But usually when it's warm, we're up on the Alley of Artists, like under the big cathedral, Andriivsky.
But it's a lot of fun. There was a big, there's a lot of people there.
It's packed.
Good size.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the music. And then Dennis, because he introduced me to that place, as well as you. And when I guess when the last event happened, I guess maybe it was last Thursday before. Yeah, he sent me a video, and I guess you were performing.
I don't think I was there then, but it might have been like old footage because I performed there a bunch of times.
Oh, okay,
so,
yeah. Because he sent me a video of you playing guitar, and maybe it wasn't at Spaska or somewhere else. So I guess with Dennis, like, send me this video.
Yeah, and Dennis has shot a bunch of different video at different times. So
yeah, I guess he likes shooting videos.
Yeah, he's good at that.
It's kind of like his thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you watched my podcast before, but yeah, you have. Okay, awesome. I have a fan. No, I'm joking. So what I like to do is have like an icebreaker at the beginning.
Cool.
So it's like this or that. So just choose one or the other.
Okay.
We'll start with this. A Polish boy hot dog or one of the hot dogs from the gas stations here in Ukraine?
Definitely an Oko hot dog.
Oko hot dog. Yeah.
Ukrainian hot dog, please.
Yeah. So explain what a Ukrainian hot dog is.
Well, for viewers who have never been to the amazing place of Oko or Wog, yeah. I mean, in America, I would never buy a hot dog from a gas station. Let's start with that. But it's something you got to do here in Ukraine. They have these special buns that perfectly fit the hot dog. It's like a sheath, and they actually like splooge whatever sauce you want down in this, and then they kind of suggestively stick this hot dog down in there. And it's a very normal everyday experience when you're on road trips here in Ukraine.
Suggestively, they look you in the eyes.
It's a little, there's been moments, but
yeah. I guess if you order the French version of it, they put like a little face on it, and then like a hat, with like the mustard,
You could say like francuski.
Yeah, and they put like a little face.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also heard, I guess it was Oko, maybe Wog, I don't know. But in the Kramatorsk, if you're military, you go to these gas stations, they'll give you a free hot dog.
That's true, actually. Someone was just telling me that last night. But the funny thing with Oko and probably Wog also is like their business model is they're always going to ask you, it's not just, do you want fries with that? It's like they will ask you like 10 questions, especially the military guys.
Yeah.
Because they're getting some free stuff. But then I think they only get maybe like a hot dog and a coffee, but everything else they have to pay for. So my friend was telling me like, you can't escape without like 10 minutes of questioning when you're trying to check out there.
They question me so much. I have a card now from Oko.
Let me out.
It's a frequent flyer, freaking hot dog guy. But okay, so in a Polish boy hot dog, I googled this like Ohio thing. It said online.
Oh,
so basically just like a normal hot dog with a bunch of like, I guess grilled vegetables like onions, bell peppers, and with like, I'm gonna say with fried onion stuff on top.
okay. I could see that happening in Ohio. But I don't think they have that at gas stations. Is that
Oh
what
no,
you
it's
mean?
not a gas station.
Oh,
I was
okay,
just
okay.
saying, yeah. No, I just
It's be like at a polka festival or something.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that was that one. You're 1 for 1 so far on Ukrainian
Yeah, for
versus
sure.
American. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Hocking River or the Dnipro River?
Well, the Hocking River has some nostalgia because that's the river that's flowing through Athens, Ohio, where I'm from. But the Dnipro River, definitely got to go with that for now. I mean, it is a bummer. Thanks to Russia's invasion, we can't really use the Dnipro River for, having fun right now. You can't like be out on it in a boat, and I'm a boat guy. I love doing boat stuff, so that is a
Okay.
big bummer for me here in Kyiv. But the Hocking River is like more of a creek. It's not actually very large.
Do you swim in the Hocking?
I have.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it could be done, and it's not something you do every day, but it's fine.
Okay. So
Similar to the Dnipro, I think.
so which one is it? Hocking or Dnipro?
It's hard to pick, but I'll say Dnipro since I
Dnipro,
did
okay.
move to Kyiv intentionally from Athens. So
Okay, 2 for 2.
yeah.
You're doing very well so far. Sure, like the viewers will be happy. Okay, so Ohio University or Shevchenko University?
Well, I mean, I'll say Ohio University this time because that's my alma mater. That's where I went. So,
okay, nice.
I mean, if I had the choice, maybe I would. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm very much a Bobcat. My parents both taught at OU. I went there, and I grew up there. I lived in Athens my whole life, so it does feel like I gotta wear something from Ohio on my shoulder.
Yeah.
But and it's a good university. I mean, like most universities in the U.S., I feel like the administration is sort of driving it into the ground. So we hope that doesn't continue. But yeah, I don't know that much about Shevchenko University. I know a lot of people who go there.
But it's red.
It is, yeah. The one building is completely red.
Yeah,
Like every detail of it is painted in red.
Yeah.
It's kind of intense. A lot of my friends go to the yellow building, like Caddy Corner across the street. That's where like the folk program is. There's a lot of ethnography over there.
Oh, they have like a statue in front of it that's kind of like encased with like, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the
Shevchenko?
protected. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the Taras Shevchenko. Yeah, like in the park.
Oh no, I'm saying it's not. So Shevchenko's in the park. I think it's Gritsenko, Khrushchev. I don't know. Anyways, but there's another statue right in front of that building.
Yeah, I mean, I've
kinda like-
only ever been to Kyiv during the invasion, so a lot of these statues, I've never seen them because they've
really?
been protected. The
You've
whole
never
time.
seen the Shevchenko statue at the park?
I've seen a statue. I've seen the statues that are not protected, but most of them are protected. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the one at the park, like it's Shevchenko.
Yeah.
He has like that pose, and he looks so mad. And I always like make jokes. He's looking at the university like.
Well, yeah, the Russian Imperial Army made him fight in their campaign for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Not to mention he was born a slave, so he has plenty
Yeah.
to be mad about.
He always looks so mad at the university, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, everywhere you go in Ukraine, you'll see a Shevchenko statue. I was in Kremenchuk, Shevchenko statue. It was like a nice one too. He had like a jacket on. It was like blowing in the wind. It wasn't blowing, but it looked like it. And it was a nice pose.
Yeah, we don't really have a great analog for him in the U.S. I actually think
Washington.
I think Frederick Douglass is kind of the best analog. He's born a slave and famous for his writing.
I thought you meant statues everywhere. Okay.
No, I mean specifically like
Oh,
a
okay.
Shevchenko-esque
Okay.
historical figure.
Yeah.
But of course, we don't idolize Frederick Douglass in the same way. Maybe because he's black, or I don't know. But I mean, to me, his like writing, I actually teach his writing a lot in my classes because I feel like his prose is some of the strongest English you can learn.
Yeah.
And they have the similar history. But yeah, most Americans don't know anything about Shevchenko, but he's famous for his poetry, and so it's like to have the statue of a poet in all these towns. It's kind of, we wouldn't do that, right? In the U.S.
And he was exiled, to the deeper part of Russia, and he wasn't allowed to come back to Ukraine. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was taken to fight. He was born a slave in as a kripak, so this was like serf, but these were slaves tied to a specific piece of land. But he actually was amazing drawer and painter, and his master sort of
when he was in
recognized-
jail, he was painting a lot.
Yeah, and he recognized his talent. So I think there were people who tried to buy his freedom, but he ultimately ended up in the Russian Imperial Army and spent a lot of time having to fight. And it was just at the end of his life that he wrote all the famous stuff that he's now
Kubzar.
known for. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I think he came back to Cherkasy or Ukraine one more time before he died,
Mm.
and then he had exiled back to Russia,
Mm.
and I think he's buried in Cherkasy region.
Mm-hmm.
What city is it? It's like Morshin, or is it Kani? I don't know. But it's in Cherkasy region for sure.
Yeah, it's a famous spot, but there's nothing else there, and I have not made the trip yet, but I'll do it.
You know, my girlfriend, she loves Ukrainian history, so
Mhm.
that's one of the places she wants to visit. I'm kind of interested as well. I know there's not too much there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's worth. I mean, any little trip, any excuse to take a Marshrutka. I mean, come on.
Exactly, man. No, I took a Marshrutka from Zhytomyr to Kiev recently.
Yeah.
And my friend's like, "Are you crazy?" My Ukrainian friends like, "Are you crazy?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "I love Marshrukas."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of divisive. It's a divisive thing because it's sort of this vestigial mafia organization, sort of. Not so much the ones between cities, is my understanding, but like
Nope.
the ones in the cities.
Yeah,
are-
but this was an actual like Marshrutka between cities because Zhytomyr
Right.
to Kiev is like 2 hours.
So I think I think those. I hear my Ukrainian friends critique those less. It's more like the yellow ones driving around Kyiv
Yeah.
that they're like, don't take those. Like, support the public infrastructure.
Oh, is it? No, because I get a different opinion on why you shouldn't go in Marshutkas. First
Yeah.
of all, they're uncomfortable.
Well-
Second of all, like, when it's packed, there's people like all over you, like all over because there's like not enough space. Somebody's armpit is in your face. Someone's crotch is like on your shoulder when you're sitting down because they're standing so close to you.
Yeah, but so in those moments, Corey, when you're crushed
Yeah,
against
yeah.
people and it's
Yeah.
rush hour, how do you pay the driver?
No, you just like pass it.
You
No,
pass
Yeah.
your money
Yeah.
and it like passes hands
Mhm.
and the change will come back to you. To me, it's like the coolest thing.
It's magic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But did you know that this is regional? In Odessa, you pay at the end.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
I took one Marshrutka in Odessa. It was like very confusing to me. This
Yeah.
new system. Yeah.
I know they have their own different Marshrutka cultures, and I remember in Mukacheva when I was there, they have like already payments options, like for your card, so you can just beep beep on the Marshrutka. So like,
Oh.
wow, they're like
Wow.
advanced in
It's
Mukacheva
2024.
at least. Yeah, this is like in 2022. Yeah.
Okay.
But okay, I can talk about Marshutkas all day.
I
Trust me.
love them too.
No, I love them as well. Okay, so next, Athens, Ohio, or Kyiv, Ukraine?
Well, I mean, I moved here from Athens, so I feel like my life choice has foreshadowed my choice. But your hometown's always your hometown, and I do love Athens deeply. It's a very special spot in Ohio. I mean, obviously, you're from California. I think. What did you know about Ohio before we
Ohio?
talked? Yeah,
Does it exist?
Right. It's like a Zhytomyr situation.
Yeah, I know. No, Ohio, of course, Cleveland.
Yeah.
This is where LeBron James
Yeah.
played basketball.
Yes.
Well, you know about Cleveland because of that. Ohio, maybe Akron.
Yeah.
Because of also LeBron James.
Right. A little bit of the sports. Of course, a lot of people know about the Buckeyes. Like
Oh, the
OSU
Buckeyes,
and
of
Columbus.
course. Yeah,
so-
yeah, Ohio State.
Right. So
Yeah.
sports do, puncture this wall of like not knowing anything about Ohio a little bit. But,
Mhm.
in terms of driving through, most of the state is totally flat. Mostly it's like corn. It's got this kind of Indiana vibe where it's just like not a lot.
Yeah, I rode through Ohio back in 2014.
Mhm.
I rode my motorcycle across the U.S. and I
Nice.
went from what is Indiana. So Indiana, I went
Yeah.
through Gary,
Yeah.
to Cleveland, and I was there in Cleveland for 3 or 4 days. I really liked it. I actually
Yeah.
kayaked in Lake Erie.
Yeah.
It was really nice. And then from there, I went to Iowa, like Des Moines.
Nice. Yeah. I personally love Cleveland as well. I've never lived there, but it actually, in terms of cities in the U.S. that are sort of analogous to Kyiv, I feel like Cleveland is up there in
Mhm.
places I've been. It's got a little bit of the post-industrial thing on the water. I don't know. There's something about it. There's a similar vibe. But Ohio in general, mostly pretty flat. Not a lot of interesting things going on like everywhere, I would say. But Athens has a cool thing because it's up in the hills. It's kind of more in the West Virginia space.
Mhm.
It's like once the glaciers were coming down and flattening the whole state, they stopped right north of Athens. So it's still got forests, hills, lakes, and the Athens as a city was the first university town settled in the Northeast Territory. So like the founding fathers of America
Mhm.
plotted it after they bought the Northeast Territory from the French, and they're like, that's where the civilization will like spread from, and that's Athens.
No,
And they
wow.
named it obviously for the city in Greece as this city of knowledge. And it is Athens, Ohio is sort of up on a hill, has this kind of neat like university, is a lot of classical architecture.
Mhm.
But it's also interesting because it's completely surrounded by super rural Appalachian vibe.
Mhm.
There's also a lot of Amish communities there. And over the years, so many people have come to the university and kind of fallen in love with this blue dot in the sea of red. So there's, various like hippie communes around, and there's a lot of punk culture. And so it's really like an interesting melting pot place as far as a pretty rural
Yeah.
city in Ohio is concerned. So it was a cool place to grow up, and I really loved living there. I lived there for 30 years. I had a construction company there for 10
You
years.
should work for the tourism board of Athens. You're convinced me, man.
Once,
I might just pack my bags tonight.
yeah, I hope they'll just like send me a check at some point, but I'm doing it pro bono for now. But it is cool. It's a good place.
No,
So,
I love the trivia. I'm sure if I'm ever watching Jeopardy, one of these questions will pop up, and I'm like, I know that because of the glaciers and it's on the
Yes.
hill.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's also I was on Reddit. I'm always on Reddit, and they were talking about the Finger Lakes.
Yeah.
And it's also because they're like like fingers. It's
Yeah. Yeah. North,
and they
south.
were also made or created because of glaciers as well. And they received, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So another
Mm-hmm.
fun fact trivia.
Yeah, I just got to visit them for the first time this past summer. I was touring around in the summer, visited a friend in Ithaca, so it was my first time to this region. But yeah, incredible spot. Like that area kind of takes it up a notch in terms of just natural beauty that's everywhere, like with the
Yeah.
waterfalls and stuff. It's amazing.
Okay, so enough about America.
Enough about
Let's
America.
come back to Ukraine for a
We
bit,
left
okay?
it for a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly, man. Everyone has their reason. But yeah, I like to ask guests, what did they know about Ukraine before they came to Ukraine? Because I didn't really know much. I
Yeah.
knew a bit from my personal life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on which country people are from, they give different answers. So I'm just interested.
Yeah.
What did you know about Ukraine before you came?
I knew very little. I have zero family connection with Ukraine, and I've always been interested in European history in general, and my brother was living in Germany when I was growing up, and my dad also had some different connections in Germany, so I was like interested in terms of being an American person. I had an interest in Europe generally, but I didn't have this strong connection with like any part of Eastern Europe necessarily. It was not honestly until I was 29.
And what year was that?
So I was born in 90, so it's easy to do the math. It was in 2019 that I met some friends at a bar in Athens at the Cider House. More tourist trivia.
Oh,
Such a good bar. And there's this kind of great open mic scene, and I met a couple of Belarusians there, which is now, if you know, you know. It's a little tense situation, but they had been living in Lviv for several years, and they really loved Ukraine, and they were both musicians, and sort of one thing led to another, and we ended up creating this project where we were sort of combining American folk music, especially Appalachian, with Belarusian and especially Ukrainian music. And so we created this project called Slavalacha, and this was in 2019. And the first sort of thing that project did was it brought me and my friend and bandmate, Brett Hill, to Ukraine in January of 2020.
Oh, wow.
And so the only things I knew about Ukraine leading up to that was we had started this sort of musical exchange where we were literally like on Zoom. We would kind of like chat with this Ukrainian band who are now my friends. They're all in, some of them are in Lviv, some of them are now in the armed forces. And we were kind of teaching each other some of these traditional songs and just chatting a little bit. Although the language barrier was something of a significant factor at that point. And so it was really through this project, Slavalacha, that I came the first time. And so it's always been music that has sort of pulled me through this experience.
Yeah, and you're still doing music now, and we'll talk about your music in just a second. Yeah. But so for me, what put Ukraine on my radar Was the 2014 Euromaidan revolution.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was on the news.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a strong opinion on it, but I remember seeing it and I associated that, okay, it's Ukraine. Where is that on a map? I'm like, okay, this is what are they fighting for? Briefly, like some independence from Russia. Okay,
Yeah.
next news, whatever's on news.
Yeah.
And that kind of put it on the map for me. Do you remember this, 2014?
Yes, of course, I remember it on the news. I mean, I have to admit, like at that point in my life, I was very, I think I don't want to call it a trap necessarily, but it's easy as an American, you probably know what I'm talking about, to be somewhat isolationist, to be somewhat focused on your own affairs, and to think that it's okay to kind of ignore most of the world, or at least things that are happening in other countries that you have no connection to. And so I remember this happening on the news, but the news media in general doesn't do a great job at explaining why anything is happening. It just sort of reports a list of facts. And so if you don't have context and you don't have the specific motivation to go digging, then you sort of you hear this thing and you're like, okay, like I don't know what that means for me, but I'm focused on doing this thing in my life right now. And at the time I was sort of trying to start a farm and like grow food, and very, very classic American, like isolationist kind of things.
Off the grid.
Being off the grid. Yeah, this kind of thing. And like, that was something, and interestingly, those desires and those dreams at being a little bit self-sufficient, they really make sense in Ukraine too, since like the culture here, everyone has a grandparent who's still growing all their own vegetables in the village. That's a slight exaggeration, but not really. Like,
no, I was in the village
everyone,
this last weekend
Yeah.
visiting my girlfriend's grandma, and yeah, the grandma has like ducks, chickens. The
Yeah.
neighbor has cows. Yeah, there's dogs and cats everywhere.
I would say it's
Yeah.
weird if someone's grandparents don't
Yeah.
do this. Yeah. Like it's very much the normal thing here. And that, I was brought here through music, but also this aspect of the culture has really been a part of why I fell deeper in love with the country and the culture. Like talking over dinner with friends while eating like these fermented tomatoes, the sour tomatoes, do you like them?
Yeah, like in the jar.
Yeah, you like them?
They're okay.
Not a big tomato guy.
Yeah, I mean, I like tomatoes, but they're okay. I mean, like the pickles that they do, they
Yeah.
remind me of like a dill pickles.
Yeah.
I also like, so my ex, her mom used to do, because I like spicy food.
Yeah.
Do like, pickled, peppers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I used to love those, but
Yeah.
when it comes to tomatoes,
That's okay. I mean, there's a texture thing there maybe
Yeah.
for some people, but so not a popular thing in America, pickled tomatoes, but I love them. I like tomatoes in general. And we were eating these tomatoes. We were talking about this guy's grandmother who had passed away, but she had made these tomatoes before she passed away. And it sort of like just made this click, this realization in my brain, like this woman had specifically worked extra hard in the last few years of her life to preserve a bunch of food so that when she was passed away, like her grandkids could keep eating this food from her garden. It's just very beautiful Ukrainian encapsulation there.
I know, like in the village, you've been to Ukrainian villages, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
imagine.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're very self-sustainable. You know, I love it. Everything they have in excess, they tend to sell it as well, and they get like some money from this.
Yeah.
'Cause I guess the pension is not too high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'll tell you a funny story. So my ex-girlfriend, from Odessa, and she kind of likes this posh lifestyle, right? It's like really nice modern flats that she owns. So we're living there, and when we'd go out of town, like her mom would come stay there because it was close to like her job, and her mom was, I guess, from like this outskirts of Odessa, but she grew up like in some village, but she lives in the outskirts. Anyway, so whenever my ex-girlfriend and I would come back from our vacation, we'd come back to the flat, there would be like these bunky, like these jars of pickled like tomatoes everywhere. And my ex used to hate it. She used to yell at her mom, like, why do you keep bringing these? Every time, I like my fridge, like, orderly and nice. And all of a sudden you fill it with all these like jars. And then my cupboard's all filled with jars now and just random vegetables. And
Yeah.
she used to hate it because she was like more modern,
Right.
She liked
They're,
this- the Odessa girls. Yeah.
Well, there is this thing where sometimes, in the interest of modernization, trying to, desiring this sort of like Western thing,
Mhm.
like the Sex and the City lifestyle or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like you throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Is the
Mhm.
idiom in English, where just because you want this like fancy posh lifestyle, you like can't handle a like homemade fermented pickle anymore. To me, I'm like, no, like let's keep the pickles.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is beautiful thing that kind of keeps Ukrainians like in the soil, like 1 degree removed from the soil.
Yeah. How do you open them though?
Well, you have to have that
Like, now, how do
special
you open
tool.
them? Yeah,
Yeah, you have to have the special because they don't use like the reusable
Yeah, yeah.
the
They have like
canning
this kind of like
lids.
machine thing they put on. Not machine, but it's like
Yeah, it's like one-time
yeah, yeah.
use, and so you have to use this little tool that like pops the lid. It's kind of like a primitive can opener, but
Yeah, it has like these two hook things. Like yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, the other thing that this grandmother made was she secretly made a huge number of jars of cherry samahon.
Samahon.
So
Okay.
so like
Like
the
Vishnivka.
so like
kind
the
of.
grandpa had made all this moonshine,
Mhm.
and then she flavored a bunch of this moonshine with cherries like secretly, and then hid these bonke, these jars,
Mhm.
all around their cellar,
Yeah.
so that literally for years after she passed, they would like find another one, and it was just this little like
Wow.
gift from grandma. Like,
That's really cool. Really cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I was so. We're talking about village stories. You
Yeah.
know, I find them fascinating.
totally.
Yeah, so I was like in the village, and when I was there, because I'm probably one of the only, if not the only, American that came to this village of like I don't know, 100 people,
Sure.
something like this. It's
Yeah.
in the Poltava region.
Yeah.
Anyways, so all of our family from all the neighboring villages and cities, and some of the friends from the village, they came. We had like this huge dinner. You know, so much food that the grandma made, and then some of the people we were drinking because we were just so the way I guess the Ukrainians celebrate and have dinner. You've experienced this, a lot of food, and then there's like bottles of vodka. So you have like some food, they pour a shot, you like cheers, you drink it, and then they pour another shot maybe a few minutes later, and you're basically taking shots and eating food like the whole night.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I got in. Yeah, it's basically how it is,
Yeah.
and I love it. And I got invited to this other guy's flat house that lived like down the street in the village. And so we go there the next day, and they're like drinking beer still the weekend. They're doing like shashlik. And then the wife, she's like, "Oh, check this out!" And I go in like this shed. She opens it, and they're making like samahon, and it's
Right
like
there,
a
yeah.
primitive way with the buckets. And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Oh wow, so cool, man! I love this."
Yeah. I mean, the fascinating thing is like because of Ukrainian history in the 21st century. Well, no, more the 20th century. It's like there's so much horrible stuff that happened under the Soviet
Mhm.
regimes in Ukraine. But one of these really weird silver linings is that people had to be self-sufficient that whole time because they couldn't expect the Soviet state to produce anything. I mean, obviously we have the three Holodomor events of massive genocidal famine, but then also even when that wasn't happening, there still was just a shortage of everything. So it produced a culture in Ukraine of self-sufficiency at a super dispersed level. Like every village just has to produce its own stuff. And the silver lining of that is like we're still sort of seeing that, and every Ukrainian we know, their grandparents still like, sneaks sacks of potatoes that they grew into their car when they're
Mhm.
leaving to go back to Kiev and this kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
they,
know.
Ukrainian people, especially the older generation, they have this
Mhm.
remarkable connection with food.
Yeah.
They don't waste food at all. It's like a
Right.
sin. They
It
like
is,
to
yeah.
feed family to show how much they love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because food means a lot to them. They show their
Mhm.
love through food.
Hmm.
I don't know. I really respect this. And a lot of people say because of the Holodomor,
Yeah.
you didn't have food, and the food you had to like maybe share or sneak it,
Yeah.
and you value food a lot.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. It's very interesting to me.
It is. And I mean, the food, even just like there's so many ways to eat well here. Like that's one of the big reasons I didn't find it hard to leave the US actually was the food
Mhm.
situation. Like there might be less diverse food options here, but like the quality just feels in general good and better than in the US. It's kind of like why I will eat a hot dog from Wog. It's like it doesn't feel like the meat in the hot dog is just pink slime. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's different like food safety standards
Yeah.
in Ukraine and compared to the US.
Hmm.
And even like McDonald's tastes different. Even Fanta is like a different color.
Hmm.
I remember people were talking about this like on some
Yeah.
Ukrainian subreddits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the ingredients are just like a lot better. I'm on Reddit all the time. Man. Just live
The
there.
Reddit Fanta thread.
Yeah, exactly. I live there, dude.
Yeah.
I have like 14 followers on Reddit.
Oh my
man.
God.
I didn't even know people can follow each other. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I have 14.
Yeah. You must be saying some high quality stuff.
Yeah, it's Reddit, bro. I just repeat
Yeah.
the same kind of funny talking points,
Yeah.
jokes, inside jokes, and then I
Mhm.
get a million upvotes and a new follower. I don't know.
I did find a great Reddit thread for learning Ukrainian though, and I found
Whoa.
it through I was searching for a chart for all of the vidminki endings.
Mhm.
So Ukrainian is a case language, which means all the nouns change their ending
Mhm.
to indicate their role in the sentence. So
Mhm.
like, let's not get into grammar now. I'm an English teacher, so it's interesting to me, but Ukrainian has 7 different cases and all these exceptions, and it's really difficult for foreigners to learn this language and use it correctly. But I found this amazing chart that someone had drawn up, and now I'm linked into the Reddit thread this way.
Did you remember which subreddit it came from?
I think it's just called Learning Ukrainian.
Learning
I don't know. I can send it to you.
Okay, yeah, send it to me. That'd
Yeah.
be great.
It's
But
useful.
yeah, speaking of grammar and stuff
Yeah.
like this, when it comes to English, not grammar, but just like English in general. So my 8th grade teacher, she had all of us in our class memorize all the prepositions in English. You want to hear it? So it's in alphabetical order except for the beginning. So
Whoa.
as, about, above, across, after, against, along, among, around, at, before, behind, below, beneath, beside, between, beyond, but, by, concerning, down, during, except for, from, in, inside, into, like, near, of, off, past, since, through, to, toward, under, until, up, upon, with, and without.
Mic drop.
I know, exactly. I'm out of here, guys.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it was just something that she made us memorize. I know some people memorize all the states in alphabetical order, but we had to memorize the prepositions. And, every week we would have to go in front of the class and we'd start off with maybe the first 5 and then like the next 5. And if you didn't memorize them or remember them, you would just look like a fool in front of the whole class and everyone just staring at you.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like peer pressure
Yeah.
into learning it so you don't look like a fool.
Yeah.
And I still remember, and I was in 8th grade, man. That
How
was
many are there?
2002. What?
How many are there?
Well, I don't even know the number, bro. I can count as about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was 2002, so it's 22 years later.
My Ukrainian students are going to hate you because I might start making them do this.
Yeah, do it, man. Just
Brilliant.
have them start with 5, and it's and you can kind of. I have this rhythm to it. It's like as, about, above, across,
Right.
after, against. Yeah, so you have like this rhythm. Once you create the rhythm, you can start to memorize.
Mhm.
Remember, I was on the train, going somewhere in Ukraine, and I was just thinking about the letters, the alphabet backwards, and I started to do it in my mind, and I was like, okay, creating a rhythm. And after maybe about like 10 minutes, I would just not even think and just go, I can't do it now, but I was just doing that in my mind because I had this rhythm. As long as you have like this rhythm, yeah.
You would do the preposition list
No,
backwards,
no.
just the actual
Alphabet
Yeah.
backwards, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So as long as you have the rhythm, make it fun for the students, I'm sure, yeah, they can do it.
That just goes to show how like exciting the train rides can be here in Ukraine.
Exactly. I guess that's what it indicated. Yeah. Just, ZYX.
Yeah. Usually I'm almost never on a train during the day though.
Yeah.
In this country, it's the night train style for me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I came from Kremenchuk. I arrived this morning.
Yeah.
So the train was at 11:30.
Yeah.
And I arrived like at 5 in the morning. It was
Yeah.
like a quick
Okay.
night train.
Yeah.
Didn't really get too much sleep.
Yeah.
And I know it kind of sucked because I was in Kremenchuk 2 days and there's not really much to do in Kremenchuk. So I feel like we walked around a lot. We saw everything and we still had like 6 hours. And I'm like, what do we do? We already checked out our hotel. We're just with our bags, just walking around the city,
Yeah.
going from coffee shop to coffee shop.
Yeah.
And then we still had to wait at the Volkswagen for like, I don't know, 2 hours.
Yeah. This kind of small town vibe. It's like,
Yeah. Have you been there?
I have been there. Yeah. My friend Jack, he is an American guy from Texas, and he actually got married to a lady from Kremenchuk last year.
Oh, nice.
So we sort of I actually performed in Kremenchuk at this little like art space. I don't remember what it's called right now. I'll put it in the show notes, but they sort of, it's like for workshops. I think they might have yoga classes. It's this kind of like space just to kind of cultivate a little bit of a scene,
Yeah.
in this small city. So it was a cool little show. It was a good turnout, filled the room. And then yeah, we hung out with Jack and his new lady Anya, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, it was nice. I was only there for not even 24 hours, so maybe that was the perfect.
It's like
amount of
last
time.
year, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe around this time last year, actually. Yeah,
Okay, right
I
on.
can't remember. It was in winter last year sometime.
And you've traveled around Ukraine a lot, I can imagine, because you said you go on these kind of music tours.
Yeah. I still haven't been everywhere, unfortunately. I mean, I just went to Odessa for the first time a few weekends ago.
Really? For the
But
first time?
yeah, for the first time. I mean, I don't often go to a new city with zero connection, right? It's usually like I kind of wait until there is someone who knows someone who says, we can schedule a show in this or this city, I don't often kind of like cold call a new city and just show up because it's so hard. I mean, anyone who's been a touring musician knows like playing a show in a city you've never played in is like, it's a difficult thing. You kind of have to be ready for, almost no one to come. It's unless you have some kind of very powerful street team or like huge Twitter following or whatever. So yeah, I have a friend in Vinica who knows people in Odessa, and she sort of hooked it up. So my girlfriend Ola and I went and performed there a few weekends ago.
Where in Odessa?
The More Music Club.
Do you know which streets or which neighborhood or what landmarks are nearby?
It's really close to Vauxhall. The Vauxhall.
Oh, okay, right on.
It's like downstairs. It's on the. I don't remember. I mean, again, just first time, but it's like one street away from the Vauxhall.
Yeah, I lived in Odessa for about a
Right.
year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 8-9 months, something like this.
Yeah.
And I live not too far from the Vauxhall. Yeah,
Mhm,
I've never
mhm.
been to that venue. But
What is the street? There's like a street that's like the big something and the small something, like Mala and Velika,
Mall.
and they're like parallel.
Is it near the Vauxhall?
Yeah,
Uh,
they're sort of famous. They're
Ooh.
running like east-west.
oh, good question. Yeah, because there
But-
is. Yeah, damn it. Okay.
Doesn't really matter. But yeah, I've been to, Lviv was the first city in Ukraine I came to, so I have a lot of friends, connections there. That, and the music scene in Lviv really is what got its hooks in me originally, because
Yeah.
they just have a very nice culture of kind of congregating on the street. There's a few really great cafes and bars in this pedestrian area in Lviv, and it's just very normal to go and kind of run into people, and then you end up singing, songs together and jamming, and there was a very good like familial music
So you
scene.
started in Lviv, right?
Lviv was the first city I came to. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about post invasion.
Yeah.
Your time in Ukraine. So what were you doing in February on 2022? I feel like everybody remembers that lives in Ukraine
Yeah.
or is Ukrainian or
So I was in Maine, the state of Maine, in the U.S. This is the most east and northern state, other than Alaska, in the U.S. And very cold. So it's February. It was very cold. I was there working as I was kind of taking a break from Ohio at that time. I had like quit my band at the time, and this was still like deep in COVID times, and I was sort of going through these life transitions, and I had like met a few new friends in Maine, and so I just decided I'm gonna get out of Athens for a little while and go there. So I was there for the winter, and I was watching, stuff ramp up in Ukraine, and I actually had plans to come to Ukraine at the this time 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Sorry, no, it was 22. So I was planning to come here because I had gotten a grant from the U.S. Embassy to go to Karpaty to study these like Hutzul Christmas songs.
oh wow.
And unfortunately, I decided, I mean, it was probably a good idea, but just with the Russian troop buildup, this was like all over the U.S. news. And the thing that actually really decided my choice to postpone was that they were having a super hard winter in the mountains that year, like 4 feet of snow in some places. So the people who were helping me organize this tour were saying, like, I don't think we can even get to these villages. We're going to be kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Plus, with this, like, no one at that point expected the invasion to happen. At least no one I was talking to. So it wasn't so much. It was like a mixture of these things. So I postponed it, and then, I was sort of a little depressed because I that was the first time I got a grant, and I was sort of thinking this was like this was going to kind of pull me into the next phase of my career, like doing more cultural organizing work, and some like ethnography, some folklore work. This is stuff I've always been interested in, but was sort of stuck doing things I was less passionate about. And so I was really bummed to postpone it. And then the invasion happens, and, I'm glued to my phone, obviously, everyone. And I'm like getting voice messages from my Lviv friends who are literally in the street, like making Molotov cocktails and joining the army, or like waiting in line to join the army, because you couldn't even join. There were so many people waiting to join.
Yeah.
And that's in Lviv, in the far west. I didn't really know anyone in Kyiv at that time, so it was all through the lens of Lviv at that point. But yeah, so I was in Maine, and within a week I had come back to Athens, actually, because my bandmate at the time, Brett Hill, and he's the American musician. He and I together were going in Slavalacha trips, and we've been in various bands together. So he and I decided, like, we need to start fundraising, start organizing, and we ended up fundraising actually over $100K US dollars for medical supplies in that first year, and that was all through concerts, mostly in Ohio, a few other states, but mostly centered in like the big cities in Ohio. And that's actually what brought me to Kyiv. We were bringing supplies. We would fundraise a chunk, usually around 20K at a time, and then we would buy a bunch of tourniquets and IFAKs, and then first we just came to Poland and dropped them off, then we came to Lviv, then we came all the way to Kyiv in October of 22.
So
and
what
then,
motivated you to do all of this? I know that you had you came to Ukraine in 2020, and then you had this grant to come to the Carpathian region. But what motivated you to actually, fundraise so much money and then move to Ukraine eventually? Is it stories you heard, or was it what you saw on the news? Because
I had this connection. I knew my friends in Lviv, and I knew a few people in Kyiv, and I think if all the Ukrainians I knew were just like doing nothing or just fleeing the country, it would have been different. But they were all, again, in the street. Like, literally, I knew friends who were getting like gasoline poisoning because they were making so many Molotovs, like ready for the invasion of Lviv. And I was seeing people join the army. I was seeing people stand up for themselves.
So it was the people that motivated you.
It was very inspiring just to see, like, this was the time where we were thinking, Ukraine's falling in 3 days. Like, this is what people are expecting. And instead of fleeing, you have all these people. I mean, of course, there were people who fled, but all the people I knew were not. They were standing up and doing something. So I was very inspired by that aspect of it. And then the other side of the coin was Brett and I had already come here. We had already learned a few Ukrainian songs, and we felt this sort of special magnetism here. And it felt like we had this sort of unique opportunity in that moment to fundraise because we had been here, right? It wasn't just like some random thing.
Yeah.
We had come here. We knew people. We knew where to donate the money directly so that it actually went somewhere. It wasn't just like Red Cross or whatever. It was, we were doing something with it. And then the momentum just kept going. It was like, you have some success, and then you say, well, maybe we should do another one because we just raised $4,000 in a night or whatever. Plus, there was so much energy around supporting Ukraine at that time and it felt inevitable even then that wouldn't continue. Like, there was no way. I mean, those first 3 months of the invasion, it was the only thing on the news, on any news channel. It's so crazy to think about that now, because now it's not on any news channel. But we had an awareness that there was a limit and that we wouldn't be able to fundraise that effectively, if the war continued. So I don't know, we kind of put almost everything in our lives on hold and just went hard for it. And that was our way of being a part of the war effort. And we were very motivated by our trips to Ukraine to bring this stuff and to see how helpful it was and how grateful people were. And it was like, yeah, we're, to be able to raise even, obviously, there are fundraisers who raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects. But as like a grassroots thing, to be able to raise $4,000 in a night playing music, and that's like all you're doing, maybe having an auction or something, like, Ukrainians now work really hard to fundraise like $500 or something to buy a scope or to buy this or that drone, like, and they're constantly doing that. But in the US you could just raise more money more quickly. So there were all these sort of dynamic pressures and motivations that were kind of working on us, and I think at the end of the day we sort of got addicted to feeling like we were doing something helpful.
Yeah.
That ultimately did sort of run out, because by the time the 1 year mark came around, like, the news media environment was completely different. People were already pretty tired of giving. It's what happens. I mean, it's understandable. There's obviously other problems in the US. There's other problems elsewhere. So it's understandable. We can't all focus on one thing globally.
So you came to Ukraine in October, right? So when did you find
Yeah.
out that you wanted to actually stay? And also, what was it like being in a country in war?
Well, the first time we came into Ukraine during the war was actually in June. We were in Lviv to deliver supplies, and then we decided we really wanted to do something else. So we organized an event in Nikopol through some friends, and we went,
Nikopol, wow.
which was pretty far, and so that took us to Dnipro, the city, and that was the first time we actually heard an explosion from shelling, and that was very wake up moment. It was like 5 a.m, and I just have this memory of Brett and I like jumping out of bed, like just staring at each other, like, what have we done? Like, we brought us here, but that was sort of just a kind of a recon trip to see what it was like to go perform for people who were in these war conditions. We came back in October, and our sort of sister organization, the group in Kiev that we were bringing the aid to, and they were distributing it, they're called UA First Aid. Our good friends Lessig and Olena, and
You said Lessig?
Lessig, not
Lessig.
Omadada, different
Okay.
Lessig, but Lessig, Yakimchuk, and Olena, they had started this, everything at that point. Again, they didn't really set out to start an organization. It was just they were able to fill a request from a soldier once. So another soldier calls them, and another soldier calls them, and they're like, we need this medical supplies. And so everything is just reacting fluidly. And so they ultimately created this organization that was distributing medical aid to soldiers. And that's who we were coming to give this stuff to. And then we actually, Lessig asked us, do we want to go to the front line to like deliver it by hand to the guys and to play? And without really thinking about it that much, we were like, yeah, let's do it. And so that was the October trip in 2022. And that was before Bakhmut fell. We were driving through Bakhmut with like, armor on, taking videos and photos of this destruction. And they drove us to like a training site where we played for about 80 Ukrainian soldiers in full kit. They were like about to go to the front line.
How does it feel performing for military people like this? Especially knowing like the situation in that area. But they could be sent to.
I mean, there's never really been a performance that felt like it had more weight or meaning. I mean, we were playing songs that we had played a lot at these benefit concerts. So we were super well practiced, and it was a mix of American and Ukrainian material. But the level of attention from the soldiers, and also they were mostly like, masked. We were just seeing eyes. And the fact that we could hear artillery like in the background, and that we were just, I don't think we were personally in range, but you had this feeling of total exposure to the elements. And I don't know. I mean, I idealize or romanticize like music as it's not just, music for music's sake, but music, in terms of its meaning to humans, it's often been used in this context of like
Yeah.
cheering people up and
Build
like,
morale.
yeah, and like sharing an idea that, different people might take an idea from it. But, we really, in those early days, we really used the song, Which Side Are You On? Like famous activist song
Mhm.
written by the daughter of a coal miner from Kentucky, Florence Reese.
Mhm.
And that song has been used by all sorts of different like protest groups, activism, and we kind of repurposed it for the use of, um, you know, obviously picking the side of Ukraine, not Russia, picking the side of freedom, not imperialism.
And what's the reception like when you do these concerts?
I mean, I don't know how to say it other than just incredibly positive. Like I think people, especially soldiers who are living in these conditions of, they're there, they can't really leave. I mean, they have made the commitment to stay and fight until the war is won. They're living a completely different reality than someone even in Kyiv is. Like, we live in a wartime country, but we don't really live like,
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like the front line, obviously,
Yeah.
in Kyiv. Even if there are rocket attacks and drones pretty frequent. These guys are living in frequently bombed out villages. Like they're usually living in a house that they've sort of repaired so it's not freezing, and or they're living in these like old Soviet era apartment buildings, and they're taking turns going to the front and like risking their life doing super dangerous stuff. I mean, a lot of my friends are sappers, so they
Mhm.
do landmine stuff. So they're disassembling Russian landmines. They're setting new landmines to like prevent Russian attacks. They're around explosives all the time. And I think none of them really expect to survive the war. So
Mhm.
for them, it feels, my interpretation is it feels like someone out in the world cares about them just to visit and just to see how they are. And I think that's the most important part, is they just don't feel forgotten. They don't necessarily understand all the English words. We don't necessarily always play Ukrainian songs that are about fighting. A lot of the times it's more like the songs about love and things that aren't about the war that I think hit the hardest, because it reminds them that there is this other world that
Mhm.
they don't get to be a part of anymore.
Mhm.
But it feels good to remember that it exists, I think. I mean, they're always like asking us to come back soon. So
Have you talked to many of these military guys?
yeah, I mean, my Ukrainian now is like getting to this point where I could have a little bit of a conversation, I think, but that's only now. So regrettably, like a lot of the times I've gone, I've had to rely on translation,
Mhm.
which, you know, it'll work, but it's exhausting for the person who's doing it. So you don't want to ask like
Yeah.
constantly.
Is there
And
somebody that you talked to or maybe you got translated for that just had like an interesting story that stuck with you?
yeah. I mean, probably the soldier that I've talked with the most is a friend of mine named Andriy, and he's been a drone operator on the front a lot, and now he does more. Um, he got injured, and after his injury, he does like this cultural. He plays in a similar type of setting that I do, just but officially with the military.
Mhm.
And so his insights have been incredibly important, and his stories, and a lot of really sad stories, but also just, you know, I appreciate him because his English is amazing, but he has a very, very pragmatic, smart approach to going to war. Like he wants to survive. Some of these guys don't really expect to survive. So it can lead to a little bit of a lack of attention, a little bit of a
Why do you think they don't expect to survive? Is because they understand like the danger that they're being sent into, or
it's a really good question. I mean, I think maybe they've just seen so many of their own friends
Mhm.
pass. They've seen so much carnage. I think maybe we're just conjecturing, but I think if you hope you're going to survive, then maybe you are worried. I don't know. It's tough conjecture. I think there's moments in war, I have to imagine, that you have to do something incredibly dangerous to help your crew survive. There might be a moment where like you have to run out and provide cover fire, or you have to do something risky to yourself that will help the rest of the crew survive, or someone who's injured get taken. And I think there probably is a very helpful attitude of not considering your life too preciously, because you might be too scared to do something like that when you really need to do it. So I think that the attitude of not having this expectation might make it easier to risk your life to help other people. But I think it can also infect the mind a little bit, and then you end up not being cautious when you could obviously be more cautious with an explosive or something. And also, like, I know there's a lot of digital hygiene situations I've heard about where people, like newer soldiers, might not really understand the extent to which Russians can use their social media posts to like find positions, and like, someone might post a video to Instagram, blah, 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 and then suddenly like there's an artillery strike on them. And that's like happened a ton of times. So, and my friend Andriy I think he's very wise and wants to survive but he's also not, afraid to be there. So it's this like combination of things that has enabled him to create a very good practical set of rules for himself. And so it's him explaining his experiences kind of helped me think about what it would be like, to be in his shoes. And
I remember I was watching this old, World War I video, and it was in black and white, and they were in a trench, and they were ordered to storm the other trench. So they go above, I guess, like the mounds, and there's like barbed wire. They hop over the barbed wire, and they all just like run with their weapons to like almost certain death, because other people have their positions. And it's like basically like, World War II when they're storming the beaches of Normandy. They get off the boat. Have you seen Saving Private Ryan?
Of course.
Yeah, no, it's just so crazy. Like, they know they're going to be put in this very dangerous situation that maybe most of them will die from. I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine myself in their shoes. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think the majority of time you wouldn't necessarily have a whole unit expose themselves and like run. I mean, I think it's like you call in an artillery strike right before you do that, so they're all like sheltered, then you run, or you're doing a bunch of drone stuff. I mean, it's not,
I mean, it really depends which side of the war you're on. If you're on the Russian side, you're just sending meat waves.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I've seen these videos where it's just like they're riding a motorcycle to the front lines, and the Ukrainians are just picking them off. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the losses have been staggering in the last month. Like, they just keep going up, 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 up.
Look, I think Russia's trying to retake that Kursk region, and they're pushing really hard, especially before this Trump presidency, because maybe he'll end it in 24 hours. And that requires some sort of negotiation on both sides. And, Kursk is like this bargaining chip. I know it's not the biggest. They don't really control the biggest area of Kursk that as they once controlled. But
it's pretty symbolic, though.
Yeah, it's symbolic, and Russia has to concede something in order to get that land back. And if they start a war, and the ending result of the war is they lose a piece of Russia, no matter how big it is. Is that really a win?
Yeah. Something very symbolic about it. Yeah. Plus, we have this whole aspect where the Russian economy is just absolutely tanking. Of course, we don't know exactly what will come of it, or if they can sort of recover or just manipulate, the tools, the leverage they have.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, like financially behind the scenes, where they prop up the ruble because it's valued like at a lot less.
Yeah.
And from the value you see on this, these trading, I guess the trading websites, it's 1 ruble is less than 1 penny. Yeah, it's like 106.
That's like the real value.
Rubles. No, not the real. This is the trading value. So it's 106 rubles right now is $1.
Whoa.
So it's if you do the.
Yeah, I saw that the Russian train company had estimated profits of I think it was like 115 million, or 120 million, I think, equivalent US dollars, and they were actually only at like 15 million. It was like a 90% decrease in their expected profits.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Russia's bleeding, and I feel like they're waiting. Ukraine's waiting. I'm waiting to see what Trump is going to do. Is he going to keep supplying the aid as is? Is he going to cut it somehow? Try to negotiate? Because in the end, the U.S. can't negotiate for Ukraine. They can stop the weapons deliveries. They can stop funding them monetarily. But in the end, Ukraine has to make the decision on whether they want to negotiate or whether they want to keep fighting with the resources they have available.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I think Trump has been pretty clear. Well, he hasn't been clear about anything, but he's been clear that he's not going to say anything. Yeah, which I think is a very good negotiating tactic, like not really giving an indication, so that he has a lot of leverage to like make a decision. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people are putting a lot of hope on the idea that maybe he will make this like brilliant move in Ukraine, which I don't know if we have a lot of like evidence to think that that will actually happen. But there's just, I think we're hoping that like the right people who know how important this really is, like have his ear right now,
I mean, the people that he appointed to or he nominated for his cabinet, these seems to be the people that have bought him, because there's a lot of money that went to his campaign. And, people are saying that the faces you see now that are nominated for these positions are his like donors, because they want, since they donated money to him, they wanted this specific position.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people in his cabinet aren't really supportive of Ukraine. So are the nominated to his cabinets. So the thing is, I don't know what Trump's stance is on what he's going to do, but I understand the people around him. Like, for example, J.D. Vance, vice president, said he doesn't support Ukraine. Stephen Miller, I believe Steve Bannon has a position, or is being nominated for a position. Who else? Oh, and then plus, Elon Musk, how he's actively trolling, Ukraine, the military, and the government of Ukraine about how funding is going to be, stopped once, Donald Trump is finally elected. These are the people that I feel have Donald Trump's ear because they have money to get access to his ear.
Yeah, they're part of it.
Speak. Yeah,
but I mean, Kellogg is pretty solid person to be like being the envoy, and he's definitely not someone who's anti-Ukraine from what we've seen. And I can't remember the name. I mean, in terms of Vance, I know his anti-Ukrainian positions have sort of receded, and also the vice president.
I mean, he kind of receded. Like, you don't hear about J.D. Vance anymore ever since the election.
That's the thing. I mean, after the election with Biden and Kamala, it's like actually we didn't really like see Kamala do anything because there's actually no power in the vice president. It's very important symbolically because if Trump were to pass away or become ill or whatever, like Vance would be acting president, so it matters. But I don't know the politics of it. Obviously, we live in Ukraine. We support Ukraine a lot. We understand, maybe different aspects of like what's so important about this nation, like rising above its deeply colonized past, with Russia. And like, I think now I just feel frustrated because, we're losing, there's just so little media coverage, and the media coverage that exists doesn't really go very deep. It doesn't really aim to understand. I don't know if you saw, like, Joe Lindsley's show got cut from WGN recently.
It did.
Yeah, and it's the worst possible timing.
He was a guest on my podcast, like one of my first episodes, yeah.
Yeah, he's an old friend of mine.
Insightful guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on air
every day,
every weekday since the full-scale invasion began. It's like 1,027 days. He never paid for it. He's been on Chicago radio every morning. People love it. He's super popular on that radio station. And apparently one of the executives just woke up one day and said, I'm sick of this Ukraine stuff. Let's cut it. And it's like, especially in the next month, like there's so much news that's about to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, do we really need to encourage Americans to be less educated about important international policy issues? I don't know.
Yeah, but
it's depressing.
No, the future of Ukraine, I feel like the future of Ukraine before this Russian intervention, it was very bright. It was moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Russia kind of ruined it all. But say, the war ends regardless of, who is deemed the victor. What will you be doing?
Like if the war were to like
Just end. There's no more war.
freeze, yeah.
It's not like there's peace, but there's no more war.
I foresee myself staying here for the foreseeable future. Hard to know, like forever, but I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious about a couple of possible like future business options. I mean, for example, I'm a musician. I love throwing events and organizing. So it's like I'm kind of interested in maybe having a venue in Kyiv. It's something I've thought
Nice.
about. I'm also an English teacher. I currently teach at a private school in Kyiv, but I could see myself maybe having like a specific English school or something in Kyiv. Like, I think to me, Ukraine, even with what's happening with, rocket strikes, shaheds. I mean, I'm in shelter with my students yesterday, right? And I'm like, chatting with a student, like a 13-year-old student, and he's like looking at his phone, telling me how many shaheds are coming in and like where they are in the oblast, and we're talking about it to understand like how long we'll probably be in the shelter.
Yeah.
The level of like military understanding that a normal child has to have here is frightening. But all this stuff aside, it's like this is a land of opportunity in a huge way. Like there's I think the future for Ukraine remains very bright. I think that worst case scenario, the current frontline area is kind of frozen as the kind of like zone, sort of like North Korea, South Korea, like we freeze
demilitarized
this,
zone, yeah.
demilitarized zone, and people kind of go back to their business, and maybe we try to deal with that diplomatically, but even in that situation, most of the Ukrainian military are going to like stay active, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have a time where a lot of investment will probably pour into Ukraine, and I think a lot of I'm actually a little bit scared that Ukraine would maybe I'm from Appalachia, like in the US, and I think that region, it's like the mountain region in the east of the US, and that region, its history has been hard because it's sort of got developed very quickly, and then it sort of had this boom bust economy. We like mined all the coal, we like cut all the trees, and then the culture kept moving west. And I am just a little bit worried that Ukrainians maybe will. I just hope they stick to the good things about the country, sort of like what we were talking about with like the pickled tomatoes or like whatever. Like I
Full
think,
circle.
yeah, I think it's really something that I try to share, like a perspective I try to share with Ukrainians while living here, is just that the West, the approach that the West has doesn't have all the answers. We've also made a lot of mistakes with like, capitalism is obviously a better system than communism, but it's just like a gun or a car. It's like if you use it incorrectly, it can hurt you easily. And so we have to be wise about Westernizing. We have to be wise about like opening the markets to global investors. It's smart. Like Thailand, doesn't let non-Thai citizens buy land. It's like, this is freaking smart. You don't want to let multinational corporations buy up a ton of like this stuff in Ukraine. It's like this country should be for Ukrainians. Of course, Saudi Arabia is an example of, a foreigner can't own a business, but you can be a partner in a business. And these kind of protections, I think, are really important going forward, because I don't know, what did Zelensky recently say, like $20 trillion worth, maybe $10 trillion worth of mineral resources in Ukraine as a sort of bargaining chip to grab Trump's ear. Like, we're worth a lot of money. Like, maybe you want to help us, It's like, yeah, that's a good, on its face, like, yes, let's like use that as a bargaining chip, but also let's not just make a gold rush situation where all the global investors want to just sort of ransack
It's
Ukraine.
true.
You know,
I'm sure that Zelensky is just trying to get his ear.
totally.
Yeah, and just try
I'm
to
just saying,
kind
like,
of, yeah, we have value. I don't
yeah,
think he'll just give it all up to their
no, of
corporations.
course,
Yeah.
but I just think because the Soviet period was so hard on Ukrainians. I think people tend to just see a little bit of a black and white situation with like Western capitalism, and it's like that. You just have to be careful with both. You know, you do have to maintain some protectionism.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think the future is bright. I just think I'm a little bit worried about like Ukrainians losing this like village culture and this whole like development just kind of like exploding across the country.
Yeah, but I feel like villages are dying regardless of the country. Like U.S., Ukraine.
It may be true, but it's not. You know, at least in the U.S., it's not necessarily a positive thing. It's not something maybe you can fix or prevent completely. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it is kind of like a
Switching types of societies. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
more urbanized society. I mean,
Yeah.
it is something that just happens. But I don't know. I think there's something. I don't know. I love the Ukrainian like experience that I've had this far, and I want people to like stick to their values, you know, moving forward. So,
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah, we just about reached our time.
Cool.
Is there anything that you want to discuss that we haven't discussed already? And quickly talk about that.
Honestly, I feel like we've covered all the stuff that's important to me. I mean, I would encourage anyone who's interested in supporting Ukraine, and I would imagine a lot of the viewers are, since they're watching this. You know, I'll be going to the front line this next weekend to play for soldiers and deliver supplies. I do this with an organization called UA First Aid. You can find them online, uafirstaid.org. There's quite a few articles about them. There's a New York Times article about them you can find. And yeah, they do super great work, very grassroots, very small group, all people in their, I don't know, they're all in their like early 30s. They're based here in Kyiv, and no one takes a salary. So it's a great organization to support. And it all goes for sort of high-end medical gear. Unfortunately, even now, not every Ukrainian soldier has an individual first aid kit on their person at all times, just because of lack of supply. So it is a critical need still. And so we take and hand deliver them and hang out with the guys to boost some spirits. So if you're interested in that, check out the website and send them a little cash.
And if they want to follow you, how can they do that? So you can plug your other social media channels.
Yeah, so I am Benya, Benya Stewart, Stewart, on all platforms. I mostly use Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as well. YouTube, I've got music on Spotify. And I'll be releasing more music this year. And I'm also working on a documentary right now for the deoccupation tour we did in Kharkiv Oblast last year. So keep your eyes peeled for these developments. And yeah, Corey, thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, no, it was great having you, Benya. Like, I really enjoyed this chat. I didn't think it was going to be this deep. I thought we'd just be talking about music the whole time. But yeah, you opened my eyes on so much, especially village culture and why it's so important.
Yeah.
No, I love that. No, I love my experience in the village last weekend.
Yeah, it's so cool you got to do that, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love it. But I'm going to sign out right now. Thanks again for watching this episode of Expats in Ukraine with your host, me, Benya, with your host, me, Corey. If you like this episode, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more episodes like this, subscribe to our channel. And Benya is going to be reading all the comments, right?
I'll read every single comment.
Yeah, so leave a comment, chat with Benya if you have any questions, or if you want to see him live, if you're going to be in Ukraine. Maybe he'll post his schedule somewhere. We'll link everything about him in the description of this video, so check it out there. So Benya, thanks for coming down. I'd like to shake the hand of the guest over here. All right, thanks for coming down, man.
Thank you, Corey.
Now people at home can see how tall you are.